Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dbacks podcast, Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast. I am GB Diamondback, your host. It's been a little while since I've done one of these, just over a month and a half since the last episode. I got to apologize for that. You know, life comes at you fast sometimes, but we're back. We're doing another episode. I have a cup of iced tea here with me because it's really hot. Not quite desert hot, but still pretty hot here in the UK at the moment. And speaking of hot, guess which team has just gone hot in the MLB? This episode's basically a pitch for the word hot at this point, isn't it? We're talking about the Diamondbacks. Let's recap what's gone on since the last episode. Dbacks, after the All-Star game, 18-5 since the break. They've had series wins against the Cubs, the Royals, the Pirates, and they've swept the Nats, which included a 17-0 win on Dbacks Nurse Appreciation Night, which wasn't a promo or special night I was aware we did, but it's good to see, Dbacks giving back to the community, appreciating key workers. It's a similar sentiment that we have here in the UK to support our key workers, so I'm glad to see even in America's debatable healthcare system, we support our nurses. Let's go over some rest of things. In August, we've sort of kept on rolling so far. We've had a series win against the Pirates. We've swept the Guardians, beat the Phillies, and as of last night, we're off to a good start against the Rockies as the D-backs scored on 2 wild pitches and then walked it off after an impressive outing from Justin Martinez in the 9th. He's finally got his own light show music, just that general furore as the D-backs' new closer after we saw Paul Sewald get sort of removed from that role as started to fall the wheels came off a bit there. Why has this been happening? Well, D-backs have had a pretty solid set of trades and moves. Notably, Josh Bell has come in from Miami. He's currently batting .304. And yeah, 4 home runs. Corbin Carroll reinvigorated. He's rediscovered his powers. He now has 11 home runs and 6th in the D-backs home run chart overall, which when you look at, the kind of power of guys like Ketel Marte or Christian Walker, that's impressive. We know Corbin kind of had that in his locker, but we haven't seen that very much this year. So it's good to see Corbin going in there, starting to make an impact to that sort of thing. It's been a pretty wild journey for the D-backs this year, starting to, scrap with some injuries, starting to start to feel the impact a bit. So obviously Josh Bell's had to come in due to that injury to Christian Walker. Gabby Moreno is currently out, but this D-backs team is resilient. Last year they came into every big game as an underdog. This year they're coming into a game with people expecting a lot more, and that weight on the D-backs' back doesn't seem to be phasing them. They are just toughing it out and finding a way to win games. Against Colorado last night, it was a relatively down night offensively, but they hauled their way through. Jock Peterson came up to bat. Kevin Newman came in to score. Even on a down night, they managed to get the win. Currently they're 67-53, which is probably one of the best D-backs records I've seen in a long time, and it's certainly the best record the D-backs have had since I started following the D-backs kind of full-time like I have for 3 years now, which is pretty good. Let's talk about what else is going on. I mentioned the injury crisis going on at the moment. Well, Josh Bell came in, replaced Christian Walker at that first base spot. But then let's talk about catchers. Gabby Moreno's not expected back for a while. We sort of had a bit of a dilemma about who the number 2 catcher was going to be in this D-backs lineup for a while. People thought, Tucker Barnhart was going to be the guy to come in and be that. Some people was talking about, Jose Herrera, but the big surprise package, perhaps not so much of a surprise if you watch, the Reno Aces down in AAA ball. We're talking about Adrian Del Castillo, who came up to be, the D-backs catcher and seems to have pretty much cemented himself as the D-backs catcher, at least until Gabby Moreno comes back, because man, is he batting effectively? His bat is really hot. I said I wouldn't say hot in this episode again, but there you go. Adrian Del Castillo, he's gotten hot as the catcher. Right now he's 7 hits, 1 home run, 5 RBI, and 15 at bats. That's as close to a .500 record as you're going to get out of a guy who's just come out of AAA. That's insane numbers. People were wondering about that number 2 catcher spot, but I think ADC's very much made that their own, and it's that sort of mental attitude that we've been looking for guys, who come up and down from AAA. I think some of the guys who go to Reno and come back, and it's like, well, are they quite going to get there? It's a different question with pitchers because, pitching to major leaguers as opposed to pitching to, some guys who've played their entire career at AA, AAA ball and will never reach the majors. That's very different when you come back in and, especially if you're somebody, coming in there and your first 3 people you see is a big trio like Freeman, Otani, Betts, something like that. That's rough to deal with, like Slade Tachoni coming in and having to see that. Maybe that's gonna damage your ego long term, and maybe you won't be able to recover from that. But coming in as a position player like Del Castillo coming in at catcher, he's done all right. We've seen people like Pavin Smith come up and down. They've got plenty of starts for the Dbacks in the majors, and they've done okay. They've had some big moments, and then sometimes you look at them and they're whiffing at everything, and they can't hit a ball to save their life. Del Castillo doesn't look like that. He looks like a guy who was meant to be in the majors. He looks like he's not fazed by being there. He will swing at things because he knows he can make some good contact on it. But that's not our only injury crisis. I've got to talk about what happened last night against Colorado, against the Rockies. We looked at, who's the big standout guys. Ketel Marte is the D-backs' best player, by far this year, best hitter. Had a bit of an ankle injury a couple of days ago. Walked off on his own power after basically getting collided at second base as somebody slid in at second base on him, rolled the ankle there. We didn't know how serious it would be. It was back in the starting lineup yesterday, which everyone thought, oh, okay, he's fine. It's just, a contusion or something. But he took an at-bat yesterday against Colorado, sort of rolled over on that ankle, sort of the bat came back around, hit himself in the back, just as the ankle sort of gave out underneath him and came out of the game. And we've yet to have any news on kind of what the situation with Ketel Marte is. So we've really got to hope that that's not going to be that bad of an injury. But if in case of that is that bad, who's going to play second base? We've got, 2 guys who can both play there. Geraldo Perdomo can play second base. Blaze Alexander can play second base. One of those guys can play there with the other one, at shortstop. That's not an issue. But, it's still worrying if you're going to lose somebody like that, and who's had such an impact this season, who's sort of dragged the D-backs kicking and screaming back to a positive record. The guy behind him in the hitting charts, surprisingly, is Corbin Carroll, who was so famously cold at the start of this season. He's really turned his day around. So it's all going to be potentially on his shoulders to be that guy. We've got plenty of other guys who can hit, power the same way we've seen Ketel do. How many switch hitters do we have who are really effective? Perdomo is not bad, but is not going to get the same sort of RBI productivity. So we've got to look at the likes of Lourdes Gurriel Jr. We've got to look at Josh Bell. Coming in first base. Can he be the guy who sort of follows the speed that we like to lead the lineup with? A Corbin Carroll kind of guy. We've got good hitters all around this lineup. Jake McCarthy, Alex Thomas, all these guys are in and out of that outfield. They can all hit it spectacularly, but can they do just what Ketel Marte has been doing? Here's a player on the D-backs who is going up and is making a candidate for themselves for that NL MVP spot. We know these things with the popularity contests of can we, out popularize the likes, your Freddie Freemans, your Bryce Harpers. Shohei Ohtani will be NL MVP this year. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's the same way Aaron Judge will be for the AL. But for Ketel Marte to be making themselves a serious candidate, or to have been making themselves a serious candidate for that accolade, says a lot about just how good they have been this year. And like, people have been taking notice. Ketel Marte was absolutely tearing it up all year. And, even when the D-backs were slumping, we were doing well with Ketel at bat. But, Josh Bell's going to be the guy who's going to have to do that. If Corbin Carroll can keep up where he is at this year, that's great. Corbin surpassed his home run total from last year just in 20 games since the break. But Josh Bell looks like to be the most likely candidate to do that so far, since he replaced Christian Walker, and he's probably going to have to replace the productivity of Ketel Marte in this lineup. Christian Walker, of course, out with that oblique strain. Josh Bell homered twice on his debut in 10 games for the D-backs. He has 5 multi-hit games, which include a double and a triple. He's got a 991 OPS with 7 RBI. The D-backs are going to roll on. I'm fairly confident about that. We don't have to worry too much about what Josh Bell's going to do. In 11 games, 46 at bats, he's doing just fine. He looks like he can play that every day, in and out kind of deal. Grind it out, get those hits, get the big hits when we need them at the biggest. And our pitching is starting to actually be a thing where we don't look at the pitching lineup and go, oh, I don't like the look of that pitcher. Merrill Kelly's back. Merrill Kelly came back, did a number on the Phillies after all that drama that they had between the Mert man and the Phillies fans last year. Merrill Kelly came back and absolutely smashed it. Brandon Pfaadt, he's been filthy. People have been calling him a legit buzzsaw. He had 11 Ks last night against the Rockies. You look at the division, which we're chasing the Dodgers, D-backs are getting closer. Padres are getting closer too. We've both got 67 wins, 53 losses. So that's a 5.58 form record. That's 3 games off of the Dodgers. Dodgers are 5.88. But the Dodgers on their last 10, they're 7-3. D-backs are 8-2. Padres are 8-2. It is an insanely competitive NL West this year. The Giants haven't been having their best year, but they're still back above 500. This division's probably one of the strongest in baseball right now in terms of, form and record and things. So even though Ketel Marte is going to be having an MRI sort of this morning as you'll listen to it if you're in America, we're okay. Right now we're top of the NL wildcard spot, and we've got guys who can come in, play good baseball, do the job, and we don't have to worry too much about that. Obviously, it's going to be a major blow if, we lose Ketel Marte. But this Diamondbacks team and the guys waiting in the wings, it's full of unsung heroes who can really, really do a job and make a difference. Who would have thought that Kevin Newman would be, flying as close to being not under the radar as they are this year? They've had an excellent season for the Diamondbacks when they've been called upon. Had another excellent game yesterday. He's sort of developed it into that core member of the club, as Alex D'Agostino has written about on SportsIllustrated.com. It's a really good read. I'd recommend everyone go and check that out. So, yeah, who else could come in and do that? We just don't know. Like somebody like Del Castillo, if you follow AAA, you're like, oh yeah, he'll play for the Diamondbacks at some point this season, and no one was surprised by that. But he was not immediately on the radar when the Diamondbacks DFA'd Tucker Barnhart. He was somebody who was, mentioned on the list of who could be there, but not necessarily in the thing of he'll come in and he'll immediately be a core member of the Diamondbacks team culture and the form record. We will be fine. It's his first week in the show. He's got 7 hits. And that's the first National League catcher to have 7 hits in their first MLB career game since 1901, which is an absolutely fantastic stat. Became the first player in Diamondbacks history to have a walk-off as his first career home run. That's crazy. That is, levels of aura that, some of these D-backs players really needed. I called them demons there. That's how they're playing. Then they are not afraid of anybody, and that's exactly the sort of thing that we wanted to see after building up that resilient, tough, hard-hitting culture where you did the hits, you did the running, you got the fundamentals right, and you just did the simple stuff better than everybody else. That's the sort of culture we wanted to see coming out of the postseason last year. And I think that's the sort of culture that's finally starting to have the cement drying on it a bit in the Dbacks clubhouse this year. And I think somebody like Josh Bell coming in, that's a statement. We can drop 15 million on a hitter, and it could be Josh Bell or it could be Jock Peterson next year. But right now we have both of them, and we are getting the most out of both of them, and that in itself is an achievement. I think that's probably going to wrap up this little short recap just to get the ball rolling back on this show. I'm sorry it's taken so long to get another episode out. Since we last did an episode, I've gotten married, I've gotten a new job that's going to allow me to balance doing this podcast with, having a life outside of the small room I record it in, surrounded by all my baseball cards, which is going to be really good to finally be able to put some resources back into making this content. I appreciate all you guys who enjoy this show and enjoy talking about the Diamondbacks with, the British spin on it. It's not something I know is for everybody, but I appreciate all you guys. I'm probably going to have a shift around of what this show is going to be fairly soon in terms of how accessible it is for me to record it here in the UK. I'm probably going to start recording this after the Sunday games because that's the least ridiculous of a first pitch time if you're watching over here in Europe. And I'll start recording it after the Sunday game so you get a little bit of a live reaction as well as just the week's recap. And I'll be putting this out on Monday mornings as you listen to it in the US. So, yeah, thank you guys very much again for listening. I will see you on the next episode. Please remember to subscribe or follow wherever you are listening. Go follow me on Twitter over at GBDiamondback so you never miss when we put out a new episode. And go Snakes!